Hey gorgeous souls, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another one of my videos today. So today's video is a episode from my #1 spirituality podcast on iTunes, Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. And today's interview is with the lovely Phyllis Curott. So I absolutely loved this episode because I was so intrigued to learn how witchiness and Wicca could help us to create spells for abundance and deepen our spiritual manifestation practice. And what Phyllis ended up sharing in this interview just blew my mind in so many different ways. I absolutely love the wisdom and years of experience she pours into all of her teachings, and her new book just really echoes all of that. So we talk about the book, we talk about how to create spells for abundance and living well, what a spell is it the same as manifestation? It's a really beautifully enriching conversation, and I really hope you are going to enjoy it. But if you're new here to my channel, then welcome. My name is Emma. I'm an award-winning life coach and 2 times best-selling author, law of attraction YouTuber here on my channel, and I'm the host of Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. And here on my channel, I cover all things law of attraction, manifestation, spirituality, and self-help. So not only do I really hope you're going to enjoy this podcast episode, but the abundance of videos here on my channel over the last 8 years. And of course, if you want to listen to even more inspiring interviews just like this one, you can find a playlist here on my YouTube. And oh my gosh, you can find the best interviews on that playlist from leading experts in our sphere: Marie Forleo, Gabby Bernstein, Wim Hof, Young Puello, Marianne Williamson, literally to name a few. So head on over and have a look at those if you want to catch even more inspirational interviews just like this one. But without further ado, let's get started with Phyllis's episode, and I really hope you're going to enjoy it. So thank you so much, gorgeous souls, for joining me for another one of my Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast episodes today. I am so excited to have the wonderful Phyllis Curott with us today. So spiritual pioneer Phyllis, if you don't know, is one of America's first public witches, and for more than 40 years an internationally respected teacher of witchcraft as our re-emerging Euro-Indigenous wisdom. She's also an attorney whose groundbreaking cases secured the rights of witches, the world's most widely published and best-selling Wiccan author too. Her newest book, Spells for Living Well, A Witch's Guide to Manifesting Change, Wellbeing and Wonder, is out now. Welcome to the show, Phyllis. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's really fun to be here. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Oh, me too. Me too. As I said, I'm so excited to talk all things manifestation, but all things witchy as well, because here on this podcast, we love all things witchy. But before we dive into all of that goodness, Phyllis, I would love to know, when did you spiritually awaken? What's your story?
Oh, well, that's the story of my very first book. It was a memoir, Book of Shadows, and did smashingly well all over the world. So I have to give you the short version here. I was in law school. I was in my second year in law school, came from a family of social justice activists, not religious, but I would say deeply spiritual, looking back on them, and the fervency of their commitment, their belief in the goodness of the human heart. And they basically taught me the golden rule, and I was perfectly satisfied with that. And went to law school and was fighting organized crime and trade unions, which in fact turned out to be my first few jobs out of law school. And I think it was because my left brain, my rational brain, was so overcharged, right, with law and order, logos, that the universe just reached out to me. I honestly think that the divine reaches out to all of us, taps us on the shoulder, sends us messages that we're able to receive. They're sort of tailored to each of us. And I started having precognitive dreams. I started having a sense of what somebody would say before they said it, which could be very interesting, but not terribly helpful in law school because they always want you to give the reasoning. And it's like, I heard you thinking. That's not a good answer. But it was quite extraordinary. And one thing in particular was a recurring dream that I had of a woman who was bare-breasted and holding a book. She had a sort of a skirt on, and she was holding a book, and she had a crown on her head, which I could never see too clearly, and a light at her throat. She never said anything. She always sort of looked past me. And I had that dream 3-4 times over the course of 2 years. It was a sign, which I didn't know was being sent to me. I started reading, along with all my law books. On my desk, I had quantum physics because I was a rationalist. I was like, what is this? And what I discovered was that the mind has a capacity, consciousness has a capacity to engage with creation, right? This is manifesting. This is the law of abundance, that we are so much more interconnected with the consciousness of creation than our culture teaches us. But I couldn't find an explanation for why it was happening to me. It took a couple of years, actually, about 1.5 years. I went to Washington. I was working with Ralph Nader, fighting organized crime and trade unions. I ended up back in New York working for a foundation. And I became very good friends with a very interesting woman. Bright, successful, managing a rock and roll band, which is what I was doing at the time in my spare time. Great. The only thing weird about her was that she called herself a witch, which I decided I would just put aside. This was in the 80s. No, this was in the 70s, in the early 80s. And I was a witch. That's wacky, but she's very marvelous. One day she took me to have my cards read, and I was in a bit of a crisis, and I'd never had my tarot cards read before. At the end of it, the woman who read my cards said, I think you're going to find what you're looking for, which was basically the magic that had started when I was in law school, but had stopped when I went to work in Washington and came back to New York. I wanted that magic again. And that had been my question for her. She'd done a really impressive reading. She knew things I hadn't told anyone. At the end, she said, I have a women's group. I think you might find what you're looking for there. If you'd like to come, you're welcome. I politely thanked her and left. I paid her for the reading. I left the store. My friend said, oh my gosh, she invited you. Nobody gets invited. I mean, witches, you can't even find them. And she's invited you. And I was like, yeah, no, witches, thanks, but no. A couple months later, I was wandering around the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where I'd spent a lot of time when all of this magic had started while I was in law school, because it just felt magical to me to be there. And I wandered into a wing that was new. It was a sculpture wing. And I'm wandering through. It was beautiful, beautiful fountains and statues. It was gorgeous. Light coming in from Central Park. And all of a sudden, seated in front of me is the woman from my dreams. The whole room bleached out, and this guard sort of got me into a chair near her. I was afraid to look at her. As I sort of recovered, I started down at her toes, and there was a little sign by her toes, and it said the Libyan Sybil. And I knew Sybil was vaguely magical, but right, she was not holding a book. She was holding a rolled up sheaf of papers. And now I could see the crown on her head, which was triangular. And there was a 6-pointed star at her throat, which had always just been a light. I went home after a couple of hours sitting there, just my mind blown, right? And I looked up the word Sybil in my Oxford English Dictionary. I took out my glasses. I took out the magnifying glass because it was the annotated version. I had both of them, and I looked it up, and yeah, magical. It said an ancient prophetess, comma, a witch. I called my friend. I said, what do you think? She said, it doesn't get any louder than that. Call. And I went to work with them for 3 years. It was the last place in the world that an Ivy League, which is sort of the equivalent of Oxford and Cambridge, hyper intellectual. I was a lawyer. It was the last place in the world I would ever think, because I still had all the stereotypes in my head, the green-faced hag, Margaret Hamilton, and the broom. And, either they were Hollywood weird figures or storybooks, fairy tale figures, right? Or they didn't exist, or they were crazy people. They weren't crazy. They were women who were rediscovering our ancestral Euro-Indigenous wisdom traditions and who were reviving it. And I worked with them for 3.5 years and then went out on my own. was blessed at the same time. I was led into a circle working with core shamanic techniques, which are indigenous practices used by indigenous peoples all over the globe. They merged. I recognized immediately in the essence, the structure of what these women were doing, these ancient practices, these ways for taking off the blindfold to see the sacred. And I was seeing the world as it is, as a truly divine, a sacred, a world full of magic, divine magic. And that was it. I was off and running. I was public. I went public right away. I was like, no more with the stereotypes, no more fear, no more witch hunts, no more lies. This was all the distorted notions about witches came out of the persecution that started in the late 1400s and ran actually right up into the mid 1800s. And it was a persecution of our ancestral traditions of women. I was a feminist, so the more I learned, the more I realized, especially today, that the witch is sort of the ultimate feminist icon. She is the badass heroine of potentially of all of our lives. She's the divine wisdom that resides especially within women, but in all people, regardless of your gender identity. And she represents our capacity to experience the sacred, not to be told by someone else, invariably a man, what to believe, but to have practices that enable you to have experiences. And that's empowering. So that's how I became a witch. I wrote Book of Shadows a few years later, and I became increasingly public and teaching. And now witchcraft is the fastest growing spirituality in the United States.
Which is incredible.
Yes, it is. It really is. From the back of the broom closet to the front of, well, not the front page of the New York Times, but I made it into the London Times with a line that said, if anybody can persuade us that witchcraft is reasonable, it's Phyllis Curott. It's not just reasonable, it's wise. That's the word witch. The reason I say it's our Euro-Indigenous wisdom tradition is witch is a 16th century phonetic spelling of wicca, W-I-C-C-E. That's a 5,500-year-old word. It arrived in England with the Anglo-Saxons when they came across. And it meant a wise one, a seer of the sacred, the shaman, to use that term, which is very common now. The one who is able to see and to help others to see that the realms of spirit and the realms of creation, of nature, are one continuum. That's how we manifest. And that's why we cast spells.
Yes, love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Phyllis, because it's so interesting. Because again, I spiritually awakened 6 years ago. So I spiritually awakened into a world which was much more accepting of spirituality, witches, manifestation. I mean, yes, here in the UK, it definitely was a little bit taboo 6 years ago. Now it feels like the buzzword that's everywhere. But it's so interesting to hear your story from the 70s and 80s, because I can only, imagine what that must have been like coming out of the witch's closet, so to speak, from having such a corporate professional role as a lawyer. It's a big 180 shift from what you were doing before, but amazing that you were the one to do that, and amazing that you went on to obviously go and help rights of witches pass as well, which is incredible to hear and amazing to hear your journey and story. But I want to ask you, Phyllis, because I definitely along my spiritual journey used to really feel creeped out when people talk about witches and Wicca, and I used to think, oh no, you don't want to do that, manifestation, love and light, all of this. And then when I read Lisa Lister's book Witch, and really got into it and realized I am a white witch and I do spell casting with manifestation, my whole view on witches changed forever. And now I definitely love it, love all things witches. We've covered it in the membership, we've had witches on the podcast before, so I think more and more of us are feeling more comfortable and reclaiming that term as well. But when we think of witches, we think of magic and spells, but what in your words is magic?
Well, I have a definition that is a work in progress, but is the result of more than 40 years of engaging with it, right? So a very common definition that you'll see, especially with young witches who are just sort of coming to this, and that you'll see in lots of sort of well-intentioned but kind of superficial books that don't come out of training, is this idea that magic is a way of manipulating unseen forces, right? Of setting your intention and, manifesting what you want. It's a very small, like, it's like a little bite when you could be sitting down to a 7-course meal with proper wines. For me, I really discovered it when I was asked to write my first book, Book of Shadows, about how this New York lawyer ends up becoming a witch. And I realized that in the stories that I wanted to recount, because I wanted to take people into the journey and into my doubts, and the questions that I kept raising, am I crazy? Is this real? Is magic real? What does it mean when we cast a spell and it actually manifests? Or it manifests, but in a very different way than we expected. Is it real? And all the stories that seemed most profound and remarkable to me were the ones where I realized that magic wasn't this effort to manipulate for personal gratification, that every time we cast a spell, that I cast a spell, or the people that I was working with, my first coven, my second, my 15th, and other people I knew, especially older witches who'd been working for a while, it was just clear that magic is not a manipulation, it's a communion. Magic is the state of being. Magic is the source of creation. It's the flow of that source into creation. It's the thing that unites realms of spirit with the natural world and with each of us. In Welsh, they call it nufra. You've heard chi, the Tao, the flow, that which can be named is not the Tao, right? So there's always the limitation of our human need to grab something mysterious and put it in a little box, but it won't stay in a box, right? Because it's vast, because it is a mystery, because it's full on sacred. It is not someplace else. It's here. It's present for us. It's aware of us. Anybody who's working with manifesting knows, right? It is a presence of divine energy that dwells in all things, in each of us, and in all aspects of creation. Some traditions refer to it as consciousness. To me, it's more than consciousness, but that's okay. That's an okay word. It is the flow of this holy energy that manifests in form and then moves from form back into energy. We have a wonderful chant, one thing becomes another in the mother. This movement back and forth. It's benevolent. It's life generating. That's its essence. We are in a closed system. So you get a billion heartbeats. That's it. Everything gets more or less a billion heartbeats, whether it's a butterfly or an elephant or us. Get a billion heartbeats. I don't know why. That's just how it works here in this realm of embodiment. And then you're unmade in order for your parts to be made again into new life. And everybody's discovering mushrooms right now, and this is part of their magic, right? That they unmake in order for things to be remade, regenerated. Life is always regenerating, and that's magic. And in the flow of this magic, there is, and you had sent an email, and so I'm anticipating, but there is this organizing principle which describes the nature of that magic as it takes shape. It's nature's magic. It took a long time. My first 20 years were absolutely spent about entering realms of spirit, about using the drum and chanting and circles and all kinds of wonderful magical rituals to alter guided visualizations and meditations and chanting and divination, and certainly drumming, which has a profound effect, alters your brain waves and opens your capacity to perceive dimensions of reality that you don't normally notice, because we're all in survival. Don't get hit by the bus, bring home the groceries. Oh my gosh, what's happening, with the prime minister again, that sort of stuff, right? But when we shift our mode of perception, when we alter our consciousness, we're able to see wider realms of being. And that was fascinating to me. But after about 20 years, nature was sort of like, okay, all well and good, but you're kind of missing the point, because spirit and world are one thing. And the natural world embodies it. And lo and behold, by asking, by studying, by being very humble, by casting circles and doing divination, by listening, by visiting sacred places, by paying attention to the signs that appeared, because they appear to all of us. I had a very profound gift given to me by Mother Earth, and she basically showed me that all living things live according to her wisdom, except us. We've forgotten, because we think with our consciousness that we're at the top of the pyramid, that we're in control and that we deserve, whatever we want, and we're just entitled to take it. And we pay no attention to the consequences, right? And look at the mess we've made. So, in fact, the natural world into which we're interwoven, though we've been oblivious to that, is organized around this gorgeous, deeply spiritual, very practical central principle, which makes me cry whenever, it's the first thing I think of in the morning when I wake up. I was lying in bed this morning and it was raining, and I thought, all living things, when taking good care of themselves, it's built in to each of us that we are meant to live happy, healthy lives. And it's in our bones how to do that. It's gotten a little weird with human beings, because we haven't been very good about how we operate this, right? We've been kind of selfish and kind of greedy and kind of bullying and kind of entitled and a lot of not so good things. My dog is not really like that. The oak tree that I'm looking at out my window, covered in golden leaves, the bacteria, the healthy ones in your gut and in mine right now, everything is operating according to this principle. They know in their DNA what they need to be healthy and to be happy, and that's how they behave. But the magic part is that they don't realize, but now we do, or should, that the consequences of their self-care, of attending to their well-being, actually creates the conditions that make the world, the natural world, better for all life. So doing what comes natural creates healthy natural conditions, creates healthy air, healthy water, soil, temperatures, balance, salinity, dynamics, everything. Like, the more we study nature, the more we recognize this. And in fact, now biologists are confirming it. They're even calling it nature's secret magic, because it's so extraordinary, right? That's the organizing principle at the heart of creation. All living things are meant to take good care of themselves in natural ways that make them healthy and happy. And the consequences of that self-care is that the world is made better for all beings. I'm crying. There we go. And I'm getting goosebumps. And I've said it 1,000 times, and I will say it 10,000 more, or perhaps more than that, before I go. That was the revelation after 40 years of making magic, that said, the world is magic. It's organized in this profoundly, deeply spiritual and sacred way. All you have to do, take no more than you need and give back in kind so that there's enough. And for human beings, because of this, which we use to manifest, however we do it, right? Pay attention. Ask yourself, is it making me healthy and happy and contributing to the well-being of others, not just myself? That's the thing that's been missing from the way we've organized everything. So that's one reason I wrote Spells for Living Well. I wrote it because Hay House asked me to, because they're very popular right now, right? Because people are discovering witches and they've discovered manifesting. And witches have been casting spells to manifest. It's actually kind of manifesting on steroids for thousands and thousands of years. And indigenous peoples have their version of spells to do that. But I didn't see what I thought was essential in what was being put out by most well-intentioned books, which have this idea of just, set your intention and believe, and and good luck. So you have
Go
to
do
believe.
your own thing.
Right. And it seemed burdensome to me. This is one of the things I've had my little bone to pick with the law of abundance. It's like, well, if it didn't happen, it's because you doubted.
Mm.
Like, of course you're going to doubt. We all doubt. It's part of human nature. So, if you're going to burden yourself and say, well, it didn't work because I doubted, you're kind of missing the point. The first thing magic changes is you. And spells are the art of making magic, of working with that magic, of opening yourself up to it, of taking off the blindfold so you can see that the world is magical. So you're opening your consciousness and you're opening your heart, and you're inviting that magic to come to you, to help you, to bless you, like prayer, but you're also going to the well of your own inner divinity. And spells help you have confidence in that. They help you to shape it. They engage not just your intention, but your heart, which is everything, because that's really where the sacred lives. They show you how to work with energy. They show you how they help you to work with the powers of the natural world, the energies, the currents, the great currents and cycles of the moon, of the lunar energy, which is so important for women, which witches have always known, and the seasonal energies, how to tap into them, how to work with them. And magic changes you. And even if your spell doesn't work, because they don't always work, or they'll work, but they don't always work in the way that you intended. Okay? The one way that a spell will always work is that it will always change you. And it will always change you for the better. Because when it doesn't work, you ask yourself, why didn't it work? What did I learn? What did I really want? What did I really need? What just happened? What was the point of that? And all of those questions bring you to greater self-awareness. And with that self-awareness, you become more empowered. So spells are always empowering, always. And they're beautiful. They're empowering because they're creative, because you get to do them yourself. You're not there's great wisdom and great beauty, despite the things that are not great and not so beautiful in the patriarchal traditions of our forebears. But you're not passive. You're not sitting, listening to somebody else tell you, reading from a book and telling you what to believe. You're engaging in an art. You're crafting it. You become an artist working with the seen and the unseen, with spirit, with nature, with a greater spirit, with the magic of this greater divinity that's all around you. And you're going to the well of your own inner capacity. It really is like manifesting on steroids, because it's not just intention, it's emotion, it's action, it's working with, not using, but working with the energies and the powers and the blessings of all of the elements and herbs and oils. And it can be utterly simple. It can be a letter you write yourself, a love letter that you write yourself. Just that simple, because words are magic. And you set your intention and you send it into the universe with an open heart and a request for love. But the process of casting the spell changes you. It reminds you. And the reason I'm talking about it, because you had mentioned in your note about a spell. And so I just randomly opened the book and I said, well, what's a good spell? And I was like, well, I think I should ask Emma, like, what spell does she want? And then we'll find one for her. Because I've got 91 spells in this book. And they cover a lot of modern needs like anxiety and inertia and depression and powerlessness, um, and the sense of helplessness that many of us feel in the face of all of these huge challenges. That the book is completely oriented around step by step. You can open it and start anywhere. I mean, I think people should start at the beginning and get the orientation of spells as spiritual practices, not as manipulations. Um, but even if you dip into it randomly, each spell gradually takes you to a place of increasing peace, connection to creation, to the divinity of it, to the generosity of it, the abundance, the law of abundance. Nature embodies the law of abundance. I should stop talking and let you say, how does nature embody the law of abundance?
No, I'm sat here enjoying all of it. I'm like, oh,
I wonder. I just go. Just stop me. Just jump in. I'm terrible. I go. But okay, so how does nature embody the law of abundance? Plant one seed, like an apple seed, and a tree grows if you tend it carefully, right? The seed might not grow. This is magic. You might do a spell for manifestation, asking for abundance and prosperity, and the spell might not work, or it might not work in the time frame that you're thinking, right? Because magic is organic, so things can take much longer. You want an instant gratification, but in fact, right, things have to grow, take root, develop. You tend the seed, a tree grows. When it's mature and ready, from that one little seed, thousands of apples will be produced, or at least hundreds, and then the next year, hundreds more, and the next year, hundreds more. And in each of those apples, when you cut them open, there will be at least 5 seeds, sometimes more, right? And each of those seeds planted and tended with love, with care, with air and water and sun, and the power of the earth to make all things grow, will generate trees. And that's the law of abundance. The nature of nature is love. It's Mother Earth, that old, it is. She's our mother. She loves us. She wants us to be well fed, and she wants us to be healthy and happy and joyful, and to live well, and to have a sense of gratitude and wonder and the ability to give back in kind. The nature of nature is abundant. It is abundant. And so one of the things I think that witches know, which I have not found in other spell books, but is definitely here, is the necessity of acting in accord. It's a missing ingredient for most spells. People carve a little green candle, and they'll make a little jar with all the herbs that are associated with prosperity, and then they'll put wax on it, which I like. No, you want your spell to go out, not to be contained in an airtight jar. You want it going into the world. Okay. But the magic won't work unless we work. What's that old Christian thing? God helps those who help themselves. So you have to act in accord. So you cast your spell, right? You engage your mind, your energy, your emotions, your deeply felt emotions. The stronger your emotions, the more easily you're manifesting, your spell will work for sure. You work with all of the gifts of nature that your artistic impulses indicate. On this spell, I want incense, that smells sweet and pungent, and I want candles, and I want to wear red. And you create this exquisite work of spiritual art, which is what spells can be. But if you don't go out into the world, right, and act in accord, if you don't take the actions necessary to manifest your spell, you're abandoning your half of the deal. You have to do your part. You have to work. You have to act in a way that's consistent with your intention. Essential. You can't ask somebody to do for yourself what you're not willing to do for yourself. You can't ask something else to do for you what you won't do for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you act, it's extraordinary how magic can manifest.
100%. And the action is everything, isn't it? It's that co-creation process where you're co-creating with Mother Earth, co-creating with the universe. And yeah, I love that. So thank you for sharing all of that. But yes, let's get on to a spell, because I'm sure everybody listening is like, great, Phyllis, this sounds fantastic, but how do I do a spell? So I know you said you were going to pick one from the book, but I'm sure most people listening are going to want to manifest something abundance wise, or money, or even if we look at the themes of what people are feeling in the collective right now, it's feeling very overwhelmed, especially here in the UK. So is there anything on overwhelm as well that you could recommend?
Yes. Well, one of the things I loved about doing this book was that I've got some very old spells from different parts of the world, mostly Europe. Um, and then very new spells that speak to the the sense of powerlessness and anxiety and depression that it's overwhelming right now, between the political crises and the environmental crises and the financial. You start to feel as if one person, can't do anything. And, we tend to go in and just try to pull the shell around us, when in fact, if we open out into creation, the sources of nourishment, of reassurance, of realization that you're never alone, you are not alone. And when you cast a spell, you don't have to rely just upon yourself, right? There's a web of magic, which is organized around this idea of you being healthy and happy. So I think I would give you, I mean, I have a wonderful little gift for everybody who listens. If they go to, if you go to my website, it's called a step-by-step guide to casting spells. It's very short, and it just will tell you. It's extracted from Spells for Living Well. But I would say a very simple spell that you could do right now for peace and for calm, for connection, for a sense of groundedness amidst the chaos, and hope in the midst of things that are genuinely scary, is to get outside of the little mirrored box of contemporary culture that we all live in, and go out into the natural world. It can be your backyard, a tiny little postage stamp, or your terrace. It could be the park near your home. It could be the woods. Brits are famous for their walks across the vast countrysides. I'm hoping to be in Scotland, and I'm looking forward to some of those walks. I've got all my great suits and my hiking boots. So a simple thing is to get outside, to go into the natural world, to slow your roll, as we say here. It's an old expression by now. To breathe. I would guess that virtually everybody listening to you does some form of breathing and calming meditation. Breathe slowly, breathe quietly, feel your mind growing still as you're breathing slowly, as you're moving into the natural world. Feel your body growing calmer as you're moving into the natural world. Pay attention, look around you. It's spectacularly beautiful right now as the season is changing in the Northern Hemisphere towards winter. But everything is compressed into vivid color and seeds of new life, right? And I would look for an object of power. What is that? It's a natural object, like a feather on the path as you're walking, or a seed, a pod, which they're everywhere now, a leaf that's turning, see the pattern within it, a shell, if you're down by the water, could be a handful of sand, it could be a stone. I've been doing a lot of work with heavy stones lately. Approach slowly, ask it if it will work with you, pick it up, find a quiet place that feels like it's welcoming you, sit down, hold it, ask it to work with you, ask it to teach you, and close your eyes, study it, touch it, Feel its texture, look at the color, look at the patterns, and then close your eyes. You can bring it to your heart. Feathers always wonderful to the third eye. Stones wonderful down around the solar plexus by power. Hold it and allow it to speak to you, and trust your intuition. I know that the people who are listening to your podcast have learned to do that in countless ways, right? And to cultivate that capacity. It's an essential part of who we are. It may be where our future lies, in our ability to listen, and allow this messenger from Mother Nature to teach you for a little while, whatever it has to say. If you have a paper and pencil, you can write it down. It has wisdom, it has beauty, it has magic. And you can ask, what is your wisdom? What is your beauty? What is your magic? You can ask those questions and it will answer you. And then, you hold it to your heart, whether it was here or solar plexus, you hold it to your heart and you ask it if it will continue to work with you, and you bring it home, and write down what it told you. There's a wonderful way of writing a blessing with it, which is a very powerful spell. And that is, may I be wise. May I be light in spirit. I'm thinking about feathers now, right? May I have the capacity for flight. May I have the ability to ascend over problems, to arise, to lift high, and to see from a distance the larger picture. Yeah. May I have the ability to spot where my next meal is coming from and descend with the swiftness of a hawk. I'm just right. So I've been doing this for a while. So yes, it's easy for me, but you will find it's remarkably easy. And the old idea of a spell was an incantation, right? To chant over, to speak over. Words are magic. So speak from your heart, right? And as you speak from your heart, the wisdom that was shown to you by the object is becoming yours. It's becoming a gift, a power, a blessing, a magic. The spell has been cast, and the gift that was given to you is now incorporated into you, right? If it's a feather, it very often has to do with words and communication. If it's a bit of like glass or sand, it actually can have a lot to do with fire and how fire transforms things, right? And so you'll feel that capacity that you have to bring your courage to bear, to transform your life. If it's a shell, you can hear the ocean, right? And you can hear your heartbeat. Which one is it? You can hear the connection of the waters of creation with the waters within you, with your heart, your feelings, your capacity for love. And if it's a stone, you can feel your groundedness and your connection to Mother Earth, and the strength of your bones, the strength that you have to meet any challenge. So each object has wisdom, has beauty, has magic. And just by listening to it, it will teach you. And then by speaking it, you have incorporated it and you have spoken the incantation into the world, which magnifies your intention, your power, the gift, the magic you've been given. It's simple and beautiful and very potent. And it connects you to the magic of the natural world. And the magic of the natural world will connect you to your own magic that you may have forgotten, but which is returning, because there's a witch in everyone and she's back.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing that spell with us, because I'm sure everybody's going to be going out there, trying all these things, trying your tips. So thank you for sharing them. But one last question then, Phyllis, before you go, what is one piece of life advice that you would like to leave my lovely listeners with today?
That's one tip. Listen to your heart, because that's where the sacred lives. And trust your heart. Don't overthink it. Trust your heart. There's a reason that witchcraft is the fastest growing spirituality in the United States and spreading all over the world. The world needs her witches. She needs us to come home. And the way that we find our way home back to this incredibly sacred, abundant, loving, benevolent, magical world is by trusting our hearts. I would never have found this path through my head. I found it because it spoke and it opened my heart. It spoke to my heart and it opened my heart. That's where the magic is. So trust your heart.
Love that. Beautiful. Thank you, Phyllis, so much. So tell us a little bit more about your book then. You've mentioned that there was 92 spells in there, I think you said. So what can we expect from the book and where can we get it?
Well, you can get it everywhere now. You can get it at Hay House, which is the publisher. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, online, lots of all the online sources. And it's in a lot of bookstores now also, which is wonderful. And if you find it in a bookstore, take a picture and send it to me because I want to see it there. And what you will find in it is a different approach to spell casting, not as mechanical, not as superstitious, not as overburdened with ingredients that you can't find and, arcane spells from the Mesopotamian culture, although there are some great old ones. They are spiritual practices in the way that I craft them. They will open your mind, they will open your heart, they will empower you to invite the sacred into you. They will help you to work with that energy as it flows into you, as it flows into your life, as it starts manifesting in signs and synchronicities all around you. I mean, really, when you invite the magic of creation to dance with you, it arrives, in tap shoes and ball gowns and all kinds of. It wants to dance with you, and it is the energy of love. And so each spell connects you. It opens you, it connects you. It's a spiritual practice for seeing the sacred, and connecting to it and opening to it and experiencing how it will change you, and then learning to work with it and shape it and send it into the world, both as a request, as a way of manifesting, because that's what spells are. They are supercharged mode, very ancient supercharged modes of manifesting, and they always work. But not only to change your life, but to change the world, to make it a better place. They're an offering. And the more you cast them, the simpler I think you'll find they get, and the more powerful. So they can be utterly simple and spontaneous. They can be quite elaborate, step by step, with ingredients that you collect, and candles and incense and oils and potions and sigils and scribing. And you get to make the art in as complex a way as you wish to, but it can be utterly simple. You can write a love letter to yourself, and set the magic in motion. Articulate the intention for manifestation of love. I believe you should start with self-love. Start with self-love. So actually, there are 91 spells because the book itself is a spell.
Love that.
And there is a little fox that you will find. Let's see if I can find one very quickly. There's a little fox. I asked Danielle Barlow, who did the magical cover, I asked her to do it as a spell. So there's a spell on the cover. So I guess that would be 91. And then there are little foxes that lead you through the entire book. So the book itself is a spell that will take you perhaps from uncertainty about your capacity and about the magic of the world, and starts in very bite-sized, easy, simple ways, and then brings you along on this journey where we tackle some of the real problems that we're all facing, and deposits you at the door of wonder, and opens the magic of the universe before you, and it invites you to step through, with Fox guiding you, to step through into a world of wonder. Words are magic. So So the spells are written to charm you out of your doubt or depression, or fear, all of which can be very reasonable responses to the very unreasonable conditions in the world that we're living in, and bring you to hope, reasons for hope, and sources of nourishment, of soul nourishment, and flows of energy that will heal you and inspire you and uplift you and help you to find your purpose, and show you how in finding your purpose you find your strength. We started this wonderful conversation where I do go on too much, but about such a but you started with how did you start on this path, right? And we're all called. I mean, I think we're all being called now to come home, to find the sacred, to find the magic of creation, to begin to participate in it, to live these wonderfully rich. There's no reason nobody should be starving, nobody should be suffering, nobody should be killing anyone else. We should be living in accord and acting in accord with nature's holy magic, right? When I discovered what magic really was and how spells could really work and really transform how I lived in the world, how I valued myself in the world, and how I valued the world, how I experienced how valued I was by the world, and that I had a role, right? That I had a purpose, that I had a reason for being here, which was to share, was to to banish all those negative stereotypes, that were brought about by patriarchal religions seeking to oppress women, and restore this wisdom and women's power and spirituality, and other people's as well, but especially women. I found my purpose. And when I found my purpose, I found my strength. And when I found my strength, I didn't care. I went out there, with my magic potions, my sword and my shield, of justice, into the realm where I was empowered to work, which was as a lawyer. And I went to do battle, to transform the way the world sees its witches, because the world needs the witches. When you find your purpose, you find your power. And when you find your power, you have a strength to engage in healing what's wounded, in fighting what's wrong, in transforming what is damaging into what is restorative, regenerative. That's what witches do.
Amazing. Wow, the book sounds phenomenal. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. But if you want to find a clickable link to Phyllis's work or her book, you can find it in the description below. I'll put a clickable link in there for you for ease. But thank you so much, Phyllis, for coming on today. It's been such a joy having you on here. And thank you so much for sharing all your pearls of wisdom with us.
You are so kind, and you were very indulgent, and it was lovely to talk with you. And I want to hear what spell you cast.
Yes, let us know what spell you cast, everybody. Let us know.
And how it works out. I want to hear how it works out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Phyllis.
Thank you, dear.
So I really hope you enjoyed Phyllis and I's conversation today. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is in the comments below, and let me know what you're going to be trying as well from this episode and how you're going to create your spells for abundance. But thank you so much, gorgeous souls, for watching. I appreciate all your views and likes. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, because I would love to see you again soon. Don't forget to leave me a comment in the comments box down below, because I reply to them all. And don't forget, you can also join my free Law of Attraction support group over on Facebook, where you can join myself and other like-minded souls, where we talk all things law of attraction and spirituality. I hope you have a fabulous week, whatever you are up to, and I'll see you all in my next video, which will be on Friday. Lots of love.